The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
This is a reading of the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At a certain point in their journey, the apostles said to Jesus, "Increase our faith." And Jesus answered, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this sycamore, 'Be uprooted and transplanted into the sea,' and it would obey you." If one of you had a servant plowing or herding sheep, and the servant came in from the fields, would you say to your servant, "Come and sit down at table"? Would you not rather say, "Prepare my supper. Put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink. You can eat and drink afterward"? Would you be grateful to the servant who was only carrying out his orders? It is quite the same with you who hear me. When you have done all that you have been commanded to do, say, "We are useless servants. We have done no more than our duty." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In a minute or two, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and stay awake. We're going to meditate on that first line of the gospel when the apostles, at a certain point in the journey, asked Jesus to increase their faith. And I want you to either go to your storehouse of memory or to your present life to find a spot where you asked or are asking for the Lord to increase your faith. And what was or what is going on that is prompting that petition. Are you with me? Okay, close your eyes and stay awake. See where your soul leads you, past or present, to a moment on your journey when you felt the pressing need to petition the Lord to increase your faith. And you have my permission to tune me out and stay right where you are. It's a very sacred space when life moves us to petition the Lord to increase our faith. It's usually, at least going from my own experience, also a very painful place. a very anxiety-producing space. We're nervous, we're scared, we're depressed, we're angry, we're whatever. Whatever it is, there's certainly some negative involved, usually in overwhelming quantities. Just my experience. Let's go to where the apostles were. We'll start there and then we'll get back to us. At a certain point of the journey, okay, I have to remember to keep the camera in mind. I can only go over this far, and I go out of range, and I can only go over this far, and I'm out of range. So you're safe over there. Trust me. Jesus started his ministry up in Galilee, which was northern Palestine, as far as you can get from Jerusalem, which is in southern Palestine, as you can with staying in Palestine. And so he started his preaching, he started his teaching, he started his healing, he started his exorcising demons, he started gathering disciples, and of his disciples, certain of them became apostles, according to his choice. All right? But he also told them that this ministry is starting in Galilee, but it's not going to end in Galilee. It's going to go through Samaria, where he will not be welcome. And then it's going to go to Jerusalem, in which there'll be actual confrontation with all the leadership of Judaism. And that will lead to an arrest, a trial, a guilty verdict, and crucifixion, and death, and burial. And somehow, in some miraculous way, God is going to bring resurrection out of this. Okay? He prophesied that not once, not twice, but 3 times. And every time the apostles, the disciples, tried to tune that out and avoid that reality. Okay? So there was a certain avoidance mode. I know none of you ever get into avoidance mode when it comes to reality. I do. So, they're up here in Galilee. This is home turf. This is with all the people that you know. It's where you grew up. It's where your ancestors grew up. And you're just fine. You want to keep Jesus with you right here in this spot forever. All right? You don't want to leave there, and you don't want to let him leave there. Okay? That's the picture. In all 4 Gospels, it's the picture. Okay? So here we are. And now Jesus is starting this journey to move out of Galilee in through Samaria, which is hostile territory, and then into Jerusalem, which will be even more hostile and more fatal. So he's about ready to leave Galilee. That's when the apostles, it dawned on them, their faith was pretty shaky. It's fine as long as you're here, but as soon as you cross that line, it's not fine at all. Amen? Which tells us something about the nature of faith. It is very contextual. It's very related to what your reality is at this point of your journey. What's happening with you and yours? What's happening in your life, with the life of those you love, with everyone and everything that is near and dear to you, important to you. What's happening with that? That tells you where your faith is. Amen? So if everything's going fine, you can feel like you have a really strong faith because it's not being tested. Amen? You've been to those places. I've been to those places. They're really nice. We want them to last forever. Amen? Yeah, we would rather not. We would rather avoid the realities that test our faith. Amen. Amen. Okay. Well, Jesus won't let us do that. Do you get it? And life won't let us do that. Amen. It's kind of a both and sort of deal here. All right. So Jesus was moving on, and they were like, we need you to increase our faith if we're going to move on with you. So Jesus took that opportunity. He knew it was coming. It was just a matter of the timing. All right? Took the opportunity to humble them in 2 ways. Okay? Now you have to remember these are the apostles. These are not just all the disciples. These are the chosen 12 who are going to be entrusted with leading the church after Pentecost. All right? So, you have to train them in a very specific way, namely honesty and humility. Amen? That's what leaders need. Amen? Honesty and humility. That's what sometimes leaders lack. Amen? You've been watching the news? I don't need to say any more. Okay. So, Jesus' responses to them were calling them to a self-honesty and a self-humility. If your faith was the size of a mustard seed, you wouldn't even need to be asking that question. You would already have the faith to go through Samaria and to Jerusalem. But you don't. Okay? So he's just kind of, reminding them, your faith is fine for Galilee, but it is not fine for leaving Galilee. Get it? Okay. And then he said about servants. What about a servant? Okay? And so Jesus said, you are my servants. You are God's servants. Which means when you've done everything that I've commanded you to do, everything that God commanded you to do not look for this golden crown or star. Say we are useless servants. We've only done our duty. Okay? So it's kind of questioning the motivation. Why are you a disciple? Why are you an apostle? If it's for becoming a servant, it's the right motive. If it's for anything else, it's the wrong motive. Not that we can have wrong motives to do right things. Amen? Yeah. That gets a little deeper. A little closer to the bone. Well, you're not just talking about the behavior, you're talking about the motive behind the behavior. Okay? Which has to do with your faith. It has to do. Your faith is interconnected with a lot of things, and among them are trust and service. Okay? In my preparation for this sermon, and in actually giving it, this is now the fourth time, so I ought to be good at it by now, you think? Every time I meditated on the moments about when I had to petition the Lord to increase my faith, every time I meditated, I came to a different moment, which tells me a lot that there are a lot of those. And it's not that I've forgotten them, because they were easy to retrieve. All I had to do is pay attention. Just go to the storehouse of memory, pay attention, see which one surfaces among the myriad of moments throughout my life that I've had to petition God on my knees as if my life depended upon it, because it did. Because it did. Increase my faith. My faith is getting pretty shaky because of what's happening and what's not happening, and it's all beyond my control. And I'm turning to you because I need to trust that you are going to get me through this. Because I can't get me through this by myself. I have to have you get me through this. Amen? Been there? Okay. So, when Jesus was talking about their faith to be the size of a mustard seed, I think he was talking about trust. It's fine for the apostles to trust Jesus when they're on their home turf. But to trust Jesus when you're not on your home turf, when you are not in control, when you're going places and facing things that you've never gone and you've never faced, that's a whole different level of trust. Okay? So yeah, their faith did need to increase. It needed to increase in their level of trust of Jesus. Okay? And that the apostles in particular needed to purify their motivation for being apostles. Okay? You remember how they had those arguments about who was the greatest? Do you remember those in the gospel? They're sprinkled around in 3 out of the 4 gospels. So they're pretty true. So they had other motives, ulterior motives, sibling rivalry motives. That had to be purified. if they were going to put being a servant first and their own ego last, not second, last. All right. Down the road, as I'm getting on the fringe right here, I'll stop right here. This passage this morning is from Luke 17. So it's at the very end of the Galilean ministry and going further on the journey through Samaria, Jericho, and then to Jerusalem. At the very end of Luke's gospel, it's Luke 24. It's after the resurrection, but not long after the resurrection. You know, like the day of the resurrection. It's a story of a journey that is a 7-mile walk, okay, which had to be downhill because Jerusalem was on the top of a mountain. So Emmaus had to be a 7-mile walk downhill. But if you've ever walked mountain roads, whether it's uphill or downhill, it's a hike. Okay, but they were in good shape back then because if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to walk. Okay, so but it's a story of coming through the trauma of the crucifixion of Jesus. That these disciples were traumatized. They were traumatized by the violence, by the death. They were also traumatized by their own guilt and by their own grief. So they're at the place where their faith and their trust was probably the lowest they had ever experienced it in their entire life. Okay. And then Jesus started to walk with them. Okay. So, as your homework, find Luke 24 at some point. See if you can remember it as far as your car. If you can remember Luke 24 as far as your car, you just may actually do this. It's a great follow-up to today. If you did the meditation today, and if you found that helpful to get in touch with your own soul and your own needs in terms of your faith and your trust and your discipleship and your servanthood, and go to this will take you to another level in literally in remembering some of your own darkest hours and remembering how Jesus walked with you and remembering the current darkest hour and to remember how Jesus is walking with you. Just try it.